Hello, and welcome to our chapter by chapter devotional through the entire Bible. This morning we're going to be in Genesis chapter 16. As always, I will give you a summary of what happens in this chapter along with some spiritual truths, some spiritual principles for you to consider. At the beginning of this chapter, we see that Abraham's wife Sarah is frustrated. She's still not pregnant. They've been in the land now for 10 years. They've held on to this promise of God for 10 years. So in her frustration, in her distrust, in her impatience for God to act, she develops her own plan for children and she decides to have children through a surrogate, her servant named Hagar. That's what we see in Genesis 16 verses 1 and 2, where it says this: Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So she has this plan based on trust. And here's the probably the bigger issue. Abram decides to listen to the voice of Sarai. And that's a mistake. It's a mistake because we should listen to the voice of God, not the voice of our heart, not the voice of the culture, not the voice of our friends, not even the voice of our family. Our priority, our trust should always be placed in the voice of God. But Sarai doesn't trust God, has not listened to the voice of God. Abram listens to the voice of his wife instead of listening to the voice of God. And that's going to create a whole bunch of issues. Now, this plan works. Hagar does become pregnant, but it comes with some issues. And we'll see that in Genesis 16 verses 3 through 6, where it says this: So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. And Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. So the plan worked, but it came with some unexpected problems and some avoidable problems that now this issue, this tension has arisen between Hagar and Sarai, and between Sarai and her husband Abram, and that was completely avoidable. Now, I don't want to say that you can avoid all problems in life, because you can't. Sometimes you do all the right things and you still have problems. But let's be honest. Like Sarai, like Abram, like Hagar, sometimes we create our own problems. Many times we create our own problems, and they're unavoidable. And if we had simply trusted God and obeyed God, we could have saved ourselves a lot of drama and a lot of stress in life. So we see that Sarah's angry. Abram sees she's angry, and instead of being the leader in the household, he capitulates leadership, says, do whatever you want, Sarah, do whatever you want to her. Hagar is upset because now she's dealing with constant attacks from Sarai, and so she runs away. So I want you to notice how each of these dealt with their problems. Sarai blamed others. She blamed Abraham for her problems. Abraham was irresponsible with his problems. He said, I'm not going to deal with this, you deal with it. And Sarai ran away from her problem. So those are three common ways of responding to problems today that don't work. Blaming others for our problems, acting irresponsibly and putting the problem on somebody else, or running away from our problems. And this all started with distrust and listening to the wrong voice. So hopefully you and I can learn a lesson from the way they dealt with their problems and have a better, more biblical response. So at this point, Hagar has run away. She's going to encounter God while she has run away. And surprisingly, God's going to instruct her to go back to that place that she hates, to go back to that difficult place. And at the same time, God promises her that he will mercifully bring good out of this seemingly bad situation. Here's what it says in verses 7 through 10. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water, that's Hagar, in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? And she said, I'm fleeing from my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress and submit to her. And the angel of the Lord also said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so they cannot be numbered for multitude. Now, this sometimes surprises people, but many times God redirects us to go back to the hard place, that job we hate, that marriage that we don't want to stay in, that ministry that we find super difficult, or we have to deal with difficult people. Many times it's not God's will that we run away, but rather we go back, deal with it biblically, trust him to bring good out of a bad situation. So that's something for you and I to consider today. Hope this has been a blessing to you. Have a great day.